For the joy of it. Readings from the unpublished autobiography of John W. Duarte, along with photos and videos representing his musical life. My maternal grandfather, William John Greenhoff, was an engineer who emigrated to the USA sometime in the 1880s. He was born in 1863, to seek a better life for his Lancastrian wife Lizzie and himself. His search was successful, and my mother was born in Philadelphia, USA in 1890. Working for Weigel Otis, makers of lifts or elevators, the family lived in New York, Chicago, Scranton, and somewhere in Texas, finally being stationed in Bahia, Brazil, as superintendent of construction in South America. There my mother married a well-born Brazilian whose surname was Belfort Duarte. He died at an early age, preceded by their son Mario, a sibling of whom I know nothing beyond a photograph of his grave. It was during the wartime years in London that my mother had an affair with John McLagan, a married commissioned officer in the London Scottish Regiment, which is how I came into this world. It is only in the last few decades that illegitimate birth has ceased to be a serious social stigma, and it is from chronic habit that I have continued to respond to inquiries about the origin of my surname by saying there is no Latin blood in my veins, that my father was a Scot, and that Duarte is both a Portuguese and Scottish name, usually without the E, all of which is true. I was therefore brought up by my mother and maternal grandparents, and I never knew my natural father or any of his kin. It is safe to predict that those among the many I have alienated along life's path, for whom no joke is too obvious to resist, will not hesitate to accept a free gift. I always knew he was a bastard. My early years were marked by a comprehensive absence of any interest in music. Efforts to interest me in the piano failed miserably, so it did not seem to be the answer to my musical prayers. A well-meaning relative had presented me with a ukulele, my response to which had been to remove its strings and to consign it to a corner. It so happened that one of our friends, Roy Ellis, was a cabinet maker by trade and an amateur player of the banjolele, and he was asked to restore my ukulele to usable condition and to teach me to play it. I learned to play from window diagrams, and though they meant little to me at the time, chord symbols, and I can still remember the first accompaniment I was taught, though I have no memory of the tune itself. The chords for "Whistle and Blow Your Blues Away" are graven in my memory. By the end of the summer of 1935, I had become so proficient that the family decided to buy me a good ukulele. In September, my mother and I went for a brief holiday in Blackpool, staying with relatives, one of whom was Gerald Smith, a cousin by marriage who played the guitar in Bertini's Tower Ballroom Orchestra. We set out to buy the new instrument, but on the way Jerry said to me, "The ukulele isn't a musical instrument. Let's use the money to buy a cheap guitar, and I'll show you what to do with the other two strings." We thus returned with a pin bridge flat-top guitar that cost 25 shillings, £1.25. And I vividly remember waking up the next morning and seeing this wondrous thing propped up against the bedroom wall. It was, for no good reason, christened Little Nell, and I still have it. Ida Presti was one of the famous people who played it in 1965, before its neck warped sufficiently to make it just about unusable. Jerry did what he promised. I learned how to extend numerous nut-positioned chords across all 6 strings, but this was clearly no more than the first step on a long ladder. Thus, when we returned to Manchester, it was decided that I should have a teacher, and the logical place to look for one at that time was at Manchester's leading music store, Mamelock Brothers on Oxford Road. On the first day I sat in the shop, clutching my guitar, and was approached by Terry Usher, who, the Stanley to my Livingstone, said, "Mr. Duarte, I presume." It was at that point that my serious involvement with music began. My lessons with Terry Usher lasted for about 18 months and were sporadic. From the beginning, he laid the foundations of a sound plectrum guitar technique and taught me to read and understand music, not merely to grasp the minimal basics, and to work from chord symbols. For these and other things I am still grateful to him. Whilst many teachers, even today, seek to maintain their position of superiority over their pupils, Terry made no effort to do so. On the contrary, he gave me every encouragement and assistance. He repeatedly told me, and everyone else within earshot, that I would rapidly overtake him, and later that I had done so. He was the first of several people who expressed greater faith in my abilities than I possessed at the time, and who pushed me through doors I might otherwise have been too diffident to enter. I entered the world of music as a jazz musician, at a time when the guitarists' gods were Eddie Lang, Carl Kress, Dick McDonough, Teddy Bunn, Lonnie Johnson, Alan Reese, and bursting like a bombshell in the late 1930s, Django Reinhardt. One of the most important things that set jazz apart from other musics was, and still largely is, the vital role of improvisation, extemporization, though it was of course an essential ingredient in pre-classical music. I never even dreamt of becoming a virtuoso player, but thanks to Terry, I did develop an ability to improvise. It was, I think, sometime in the winter of 1935-6 that I did my first gig, playing chords with a 5-piece band in a local church hall. Then in the first term of the 1936-7 academic year, I began my university studies. The serious business was mixed with a certain quantity of cakes and beer, which included the regular lunchtime dance in the common room, for which the music was provided by the Varsity Vamps, a rag-bag of instrument-wielding students of which I was a part. The Philharmonic Society of Guitarists, the PSG, was formed in 1929 by Dr. Boris Perrott, a Russian émigré living in Barons Court, West London. He was a doctor, a heart specialist, and a guitarist who had performed before the imperial court of Tsar Nicholas II in 1904. He was for a time Julian Bream's teacher, but Julian owed far more to his encouragement and the help he received from the PSG than to the old-fashioned technique that the kindly Dr. Perrott espoused. Pastoral Opus 2 No. 1 was written in 1945 at the request of Dr. Perrott. This simple piece was For the Strugglers. The 3 years, 1950 to 53, were probably the busiest of my life. In addition to my regular job as a research chemist, I was also keeping what now seems a ridiculous number of other balls in the air. Thus, for most of that time it went like this. Leave at 8 a.m. to drive to work. Return at about 5:45 p.m. On anything from 4 to 6 days a week, eat dinner, change into evening dress and drive to the dance hall, 10 miles distant. Return home and to bed at 11:45 p.m. or on some occasions much later. Into the gaps in this schedule other things had to be slotted. 1. Writing articles for 2 concurrent series, Harmony for Guitarists and the Electric Plectrum Guitar, and reviewing records. 2. Contributing occasional articles to the New York Guitar Review. 3. Dealing with as many as 20 guitar and 1 trumpet students. Prelude in D minor, Opus 12, was written in 1950 and dedicated to Vladimir Bobry, editor of Guitar Review. The name of Olga Coelho may not be familiar to today's generations of guitarists, but it should be. She was the greatest of all self-accompanied singers, a soprano who played even the most demanding accompaniments on a guitar that was a twin of Segovia's famous Hauser, and sang in more languages than I care to count, with a repertoire that ranged from the folk music of many countries to songs by Dowland. It was to her that I dedicated my first song, Cradle Song, written in 1950. My 2 songs, Opus 23, were written for John Williams and a fellow student at the Royal College of Music, London in 1957, and first performed at a meeting of the Philharmonic Society of Guitarists.
Sister, awake, close not your eyes. The day her light discloses, and the bright morning doth arise out of her bed of roses. See the clear sun, the world's bright eye, in at our window peeping. Lo, how he blusheth to espy us, idle wenches sleeping. Therefore, awake, make haste, I say, and let us without staying, all in our gowns of green so gay, into the park a-maying.
During the 1960s, I completed only 20 works, large and small. The English suite is the work that still follows me around the world, and it may be the most often played work by any English guitar composer, since its moderate level of difficulty makes it playable by so many people. It has become for me what Estralito was to Manuel Ponce, and the prelude in C-sharp minor was to Sergei Rachmaninoff. Whatever may be said of the piece, and much, both pro and con, has been said by many, I am greatly indebted to it and to Segovia, who made it famous. The performance by David Leisner includes various additions from manuscript versions of English Suite made prior to the finalised version. Ida Presti's tour in England in 1952 brought her to Manchester. Terry Usher and I were deputed to look after her. We met her at London Road train station and took her to the hotel where she was lodged. Her recital was on 12th of March in the luxurious home of Philip Godley, president of the Halle Society, and took place in the large music room in front of a blazing open log fire. I sat within a few yards of her. We had seen nothing like this before, a beautiful 27-year-old woman who played with fire, total security and profound musicality. Neither before nor since were the punctuating chords in Asturias thrown in like whiplashes, without the slightest disturbance of the beat. It was one of those experiences I shall remember vividly for the rest of my life, and we emerged from it shell-shocked. Afterwards we drove her back to her hotel. The car was ours, but the driver was Terry. At one point he swerved to avoid a bollard he had noticed only at the last moment. Presti chortled glissando. By the time we met again, she had married Alexandra Lagoya. Presti's last words to me were, I translate, "Write another big work for us for next season, and write a short piece pour un bis for an encore, avec beaucoup d'effets, with lots of effects." She had previously also said that I should in future write only for them, no more for guitar solo. It is well that I never seriously considered doing so. That was the last time I ever saw her. My 5 quiet songs were written in 1968, 1 year after Presti's death, and reflect on the transience of human life.
Alas, that spring should vanish with the rose, that youth's sweet-scented manuscript should close. The nightingale she sang. Ah, whence and whither flown again, who knows? Ah, love, could thou and I with fate conspire to grasp this sorry scheme of things entire, would we not shatter it to bits and then remold it closer to the heart's desire? The heart's
Idyll pour Ida, Opus 93, was written in 1982 at the request of the American guitarist Alice Arzst, who had been a pupil of Ida Presti. After receiving the music, she suggested that Duarte should write a presto para Presti, perhaps as a second movement to Idyll pour Ida. One movement was deemed to be enough. The great jazz guitarist Wes Montgomery, who displaced Django Reinhardt from his long-held position at the top of my ratings, died of a heart attack on the 15th of June 1968. His first and only visit to London in 1965 recalled Segovia's to Bradford in 1948 and Django Reinhardt's to London in 1937. The legendary sound became flesh. It began with his broadcast from Riverside Studios, part of the Jazz 625 series marking the launch of BBC Two television. Everything I had heard was true, not least that he used only the thumb of his right hand in downstrokes, except when playing a chord tremolando. After that he came to our home for lunch, and we were later joined by Ike Isaacs and a journalist from a jazz magazine. Before they arrived, I had plenty of time to talk with Wes. Naively, I asked what sort of practice he did. Practice? Me practice? What would I practice? If I can do it, I don't need to practice it. If I can't, I ain't risking it. Another of my questions was the old interviewer's cliché: if you had your time over again, would you still be a guitarist? Yes, I might, but I might go back to my trade as a welder. You can be creative doing that too, and you don't have to leave your family. He did not smoke, drink, or take drugs, and he ate in moderation. My wife told him he ate very little for a big man. I'm trying not to let it show. So why did he die at the age of 43? That at which Django Reinhardt died, and Ida Presti was within a few weeks of attaining. I think it may have been the pressure of his new high-profile life, coupled with his enforced absences from the family home. Whatever it was, it deprived the world of the jazz guitar of one of its giants. In 1986, Duarte suggested that Sua Cosa may be the favourite work of his own for solo guitar, with its many associations and unique character. I first met David Leisner in 1973, when we met by pre-arrangement at Hart College, Hartford, Connecticut, where I gave a lecture on some now forgotten subject. It was there that he decided to study with me in London for 1 year, at the end of which he gave a recital at the first Cannington Summer School, one that no one who was present has, to my knowledge, ever forgotten. He was already an accomplished guitarist, a fine musician, and a budding composer. His technical work included a thorough scrutiny of my book, The Bases of Classic Guitar Technique, which he took as his compass, and which he reread at intervals to ensure that he was not drifting away from the all-important principles. He is now famous, especially in his home country, as a performer, composer, and teacher on the faculties of the Manhattan School of Music and the New England Conservatory in Boston. David kindly offered to write a song as a tribute to his former teacher. Viento, Agua, Piedra is a setting of a poem by the Mexican poet Octavio Paz. A short selection of tunes by Cole Porter and Jerome Kern dates from the days when, in the 1930s to the 1950s, I was an active exponent of lighter musics. We played them for dancing, and we used them as bases for jazz improvisations. They belong to an era in which the best popular songs were truly art songs, in which imagination, inspiration and craftsmanship shaped both the music and the lyrics. An era in which Gershwin kept company with Jerome Kern, Richard Rodgers, Cole Porter, Irving Berlin and others. Very many of those songs have proved their quality by surviving to the present day, a true definition of classic. Duarte's song cycle, When the Twain Meet, Opus 70, sets texts by the English Renaissance poet and composer Thomas Campion. The cycle was originally written for voice and lute, but was arranged for voice and guitar in 1992 as Opus 70A. We now hear the first song, Beauty is But a Painted Hell.
Fire is more cruel. dissembled sorrow. Constant vows turn truthless, love cruel, beauty ruthless. Sorrow can laugh and fury sing. Ay me, ay me. My raving griefs discover I lived too true a lover. The first step to madness is the excess of sadness. Ay me.
The song cycle Friends and Lovers, Opus 99, was written for the British duo of Jacqueline Fox and Michael Edmonds. Drive, Drive Faster is one of two settings of poems by W. H. Auden.
Driver, drive faster and make a good run down the Springfield line under the shining sun. Fly like an aeroplane, don't pull up short till you break for Grand Central Station, New York. For there in the middle of that waiting hall should be standing the one that I love best of all. If he's not there to meet me when I get to town, I'll stand on the sidewalk with tears rolling down. For he's the one that I love to look on, the acme of kindness and perfection. He presses my hand and he says he loves me, which I find an admirable peculiarity. The woods are bright green on both sides of the line. The trees have their loves, though they're different from mine. But the poor fat old barker in the sun parlor car has no one to love him except his cigar. If I were the head of the church or the state, I'd powder my nose and just tell them to wait. For love's more important and powerful than even a priest or a politician.
The photo shows Wolfgang Weigel and Duarte having a bit of fun. Fun is the nature of the song cycle Hark, Hark the Ark, Opus 103, which sets texts by the British comedy performer Spike Milligan, who rose to fame as part of The Goon Show, a BBC radio programme in the 1950s. Milligan was a Duarte favourite, and these concise settings bring out the best in composer and lyricist.
There was a baboon who one afternoon said, I think put on a spot. By God, how it hurt! The soles of his feet caught fire. There were great clouds of steam as he raced through a stream, but he still didn't get any higher. Racing on through the night, both his knees caught alight, and smoke billowed out from his rear. Quick to his aid came a fire brigade. They chased him for over a year. Many moons passed by. Did baboon ever fly? Did he ever reach the sun? I've just heard today that he's well on his way. He'll be passing through Acton at 1. Well, what do you expect from a baboon?
It was through jury duties in Paris at the ORTF competition that I first met Antonio Ruiz Pipo. Only once was he not on the jury, and I wondered why. Monsieur Vidal does not want anything from me this time. When I was selecting the jury for the first Albert Augustine Memorial Competition in Bath, I killed 2 birds with 1 stone. The set piece was my Canzoni Danza, homage to Antonio Ruiz Pipo, opus 117. So I invited him to the jury. He later wrote to me, "I love the music, but I'd always thought that homages were written only for dead people. Now I am not sure whether I'm dead or alive." His doubts were sadly resolved not long afterwards, but before that he sent me a piece to which he added a footnote. "This is not a homage for well-known reasons. It is just a souvenir of our long and warm friendship. Call it what you like." The last two pieces were composed after Duarte had written his autobiography. The 12 studies, opus 140, were written in 2000 for the Italian guitarist Antonio de Innocentis. Each study poses a different technical and musical problem. Eleonora and Davide will each play 2 of the studies.
I'm Christopher Duarte, the younger son of the composer John Duarte, whose centenary of his birth fell on the 2nd of October 2019. 2 years ago, we began thinking about celebrating his centenary, and the Czech guitarist Vladislav Blaha suggested that we should give a concert. My father had had concerts in the Wigmore Hall for his 60th and 70th birthdays, and for his 80th birthday in the Bolivar Hall in the Venezuelan embassy. So it seemed like a good idea to organise a concert and to bring together some of the guitarists who were associated with him in the past. So I asked Vladislav to come and play, and the Italian guitarist Antonio de Innocentis to come and play one of the pieces which he commissioned, well, it was dedicated to him by my father, and the duo Ray Burley and Arne Bratland, who have played together very often, and Ray has played every single major event associated with my father's concerts and his birthdays, and so it was a person who could not be missed out. And then also the Greek guitarist Antigoni, Goni, who made a CD of my father's music for Nexos, and we decided on a program, and I really wanted to have the Joan Baez suite, which my father wrote for the American guitarist Sharon Isbin included, and it's all songs, folk songs associated with Joan Baez. So we planned a program of pieces which were commissioned by the people who were playing or were dedicated to them, but also spanning 50 years of composition as well. Finally, I'd like to thank everybody concerned with the concert, all the artists who played, Jeremy who put together the programme, which was fantastic, people who supplied me with material, Paul Fowles who wrote the notes, Al Kunze who wrote the notes about the music, people who supplied photographs, and people at the hall, even though we had a little excursion with a fire alarm, and I just was really pleased with the outcome. And I'd like to thank my family and everybody around them, and I'm just really glad that we did it because it was a great occasion, and I really hope my parents are proud.
The Joan Baez Suite, Opus 144, was written in 2002 for the American guitarist Sharon Isbin. Several tunes made famous by Baez were sent to Duarte, who chose those which he thought could make a satisfying composition.
house in New Orleans they call the Rising Sun, and it has been the ruin of many a poor boy, and God, I know I'm one. Although she swore my life away, deprived me of my breath, still I love my faithless Flora, the lily of the West. When I am laid in earth, remember me. I am a man upon the land, I am a silky in the sea. And when I'm far and far from land, my home is in the Sulskeri. Where have all the flowers gone? Young girls pick them, everyone. Where have all the young girls gone? Gone to young men, everyone. Where have all the young men gone? Gone to soldiers, everyone. Where have all the soldiers gone? Gone to the graveyards, every single one. Where have all the graveyards gone? Gone to flowers, everyone. When will we ever learn?
Thank you.